Hello, good evening everyone. We're ready to continue now with with Danganronpa Lapse. So, we got through chapter 1. So, it seems that Pandora was our first victim. And as we discovered, Art was the killer. As we found out, Art, the ultimate golfer, came to denounce his sport and his talent after believing that he was being used by bigwigs. And there was something Pandora said that caused him to just snap. I think it has something to do with that note with the two symbols on it, which I think were his and Lyle's schools that were merged. I don't know if that's going to come into play sometime later. We'll have to see. I feel like the case with Art almost feels like a combination of Leon and Mondo from Danganronpa 1, because Leon also came to resent the sport that he was so talented at, and Mondo also was was driven over the edge by what Chihiro had talked to him about strength and whatnot. Anyways, we are ready then to go ahead and start with chapter 2. Alright. A deep pulsing darkness filled every crevice and fold, bleeding through razor-thin cracks, drifting unevenly between a nauseating black sea and a stifling, destitute vacuum. Obscurity murmured and bubbled beneath the heavy velvet pall. Competing vibrations through the void pounded and shook the air with a stiff, rich chord. The staccato hum echoed, threatening to break the eclipsing shadow. Echo. Echo, echo. Echo! Ouch! I opened my eyes as a swift and sharp pain struck my face. Hey, what gives? Missy was standing over me, her hand poised in a way that suggested she was the one who had firmly woken me up. What, did she slap me? Jeez. Take it down a notch, hon. I'm sorry, Echo, but I had to wake you up. I shook you, but you didn't react, so... I blinked several times as I rubbed my left cheek, my vision adjusting to the surroundings. It seems I was in either Missy or Ashley's personal room. I sat up in the bed to see Ashley sitting at the foot of the bed, just in front of me. Missy was on my left in a spare chair. Ashley, Missy, what happened? Well, for starters, it's about 9:15 p.m. You seem to have passed out after the trial earlier this evening. Ashley and I were concerned, so we've been monitoring you to make sure you were safe. However, I was worried. You stopped breathing in your sleep. I stopped breathing? I can't have you leaving us so shortly after we lost our other two friends. I hope that your newfound title of Ultimate Memory does not begin to fail you so soon. Yeah, so I guess that was another thing, that Eve, that the entity that originally brought us here before it was hijacked by Zero. Echo apparently didn't have a talent, it seemed at first, but then gave them the title of Ultimate Memory. Ultimate memory. Yep, there it is. That's right. Just yesterday I thought I was an ordinary student with no extreme talents or skills, and yet, in the courtroom, a revelation came to light, and I was given the unique title of Ultimate Memory. But whatever that entailed, I wasn't too thrilled. Because despite that revelation, it wasn't the strangest thing to occur. Yeah. I bit back my words in tears, thinking about Pandora and art. The truth was hard to swallow. Throughout the trial, many of us struggled to find footing in the discussions. None of us wanted to believe any of it. The murder. And following it, the execution. The three of us sat in silence, haunted by the dark happenings of the courtroom. I looked solemnly at the other two. Missy and Ashley's faces told all, a tapestry of remorse and distress. Well, what's important is that you're all right now, Echo. Yeah, thanks, you two. I'm relieved. Ashley's voice was a whisper. First the door trap, then this. We exchanged a few words, but we knew from emotion alone how heavy our hearts weighed. Missy breathed a tense sigh. Just the other day, Missy was so composed, but now, a voiceless iron curtain hung over us. There were so many things to address, but fear choked our dialogue. I looked up to meet Ashley's tearful gaze. And looking just past her, I saw something bright sitting on a cabinet in the corner of her personal room. It was a helmet. Ash? What is it, Echo? That helmet over there. Oh, is it when we first met up, I remember you saying you didn't have any personal possessions, but... Ah. Yeah, I didn't mention it on the first day. I didn't want to talk about it then. I take it one used for horse racing? Sorry, you didn't have to. No, I think this should be brought up. Ashley's face sunk. She turned to face the cobalt blue item. I'm sure you can recall what I told you about the person this helmet belongs to. I nodded gently, and Ashley sighed deeply. Missy was quiet, politely listening. Oh, no, that's... Okay. I got in a fight with my friend, another Ultimate student. Silva Prower, race car driver. That fight was about the very preservation project we were involved with now. The project was but a low whisper among Ultimate students. Word was that we would be offered state-of-the-art living and protection, seeing as our talents would be of great worldly benefit. As soon as I received my offer to join, I couldn't say no. I asked Silva if he had accepted as well, but Silva declined, wholly disagreeing with the offer vehemently. He doubted the validity of a private group that only existed in the hopeful hearsay of strangers. But what position was I to deny safety when it had been offered so graciously? With our differing opinions on the matter coming to a clash, he eventually gave up on me entirely. Yet against his wishes, I made attempts to get his name in. And look where we are now. Ashley began to tear up and buried her head in her hands. I'm such an idiot. Her voice trembled. Ashley, you're not an idiot for caring about a friend's well-being. I was foolish for thinking the killing game would go away if I removed Echo from being involved in my troubles. Being involved with Ultimate students only leads to ultimate levels of trouble, but I was wrong for thinking I could shoulder tragedy on my own. Ashley looked at me with pleading eyes. They were filled deep with sorrow and regret. I'm sorry, Echo. I realize now that it's more important than ever that we stick together. She grasped my hand firmly, but her own hands were shaking from fear. It was only natural. I felt a tear fall from my face onto the back of Ashley's hand. You know, again, I mentioned it last time, but I had a strong feeling, at least, that Ashley was going to either be the victim or the killer in Chapter 1. Because that seemed to be a trend. Well, not I can't call it a trend, but we saw something like that happen in Danganronpa 1 with Sayaka. Kind of a childhood friend of Makoto's, kind of setting her up to be like the love interest. Again, only to kill her off in Chapter 1. And then I'm also thinking of Joe from Your Turn to Die. Similar dynamic. Missy's voice slipped in. Why don't we get something from the dining hall to unwind? Everyone seems rather tense, and I think taking a beat could help us de-stress. Huh? How can you think of getting a snack at a time like this? I heard my voice cry in desperation. Pandora and Art's lives were just taken away. I'm sorry, but I don't think we're of sound mind right now. I mean, everyone copes in different ways. That's right, we shouldn't waste time doing nothing. Then what will you suggest we do? We need to escape. Missy, you're the ultimate tactician. I'm begging you. Come up with something, anything, any sort of plan to get us out of here. What's the point of ultimate talents if we can't do anything with them? Missy flinched. She looked away, attempting to hide her reaction. I realized what I just said. I'm sorry, I went too far. Echo, it's fine. However, Missy's words betrayed her emotions. She must have felt tense after everything as well, but she tried to retain her composure nonetheless. I let out a deep sigh. I'm sorry for losing my temper. You're right, a snack could help clear my head. Missy. Missy's expression eased, but she said nothing. Rather, she slowly got up and offered a hand for me. She helped me out of bed, and we quietly made our way to the dining hall. The halls were eerily quiet, as if even sound were draped underneath the shadow of the evening lighting. In the dining hall, we saw Forte, sitting in his lonesome. Evening, folks. Forte's voice was a low mumble, his posture stone. He sat with his hands clasped on the table, resting just before the dining table centerpiece, Pandora's basket of pastries. Missy's idea to get a snack was quickly dashed when we were met with the memento of Pandora. My stomach was twisted. Are you all right, Forte? The answer was plainly painted on his face. No one was of sound mind after what we just witnessed. Even though he didn't answer outright, the question alone gave him a bit of comfort. Indeed, it will be a while yet for me to come to terms proper, but... Oh. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that. I'm gonna butcher it horribly, I'm sure. Always rise after a fall. Okay, thank you for translating at least, Ashley. Always rise. Pain exists so we can grow and learn from it. What we do with this feeling of misfortune is what will motivate us to move forward. We will learn from tragedy and grow forward. It's really all we can do. I imagine Art was deserted. Regardless, his generous fixings, being driven into a companionless corner like that would make anyone miserable. And being here now, with our friends Missy and Ashley, as well as the others, should teach us that we have friends all around us who would feel anguish without one another. Alas, it's hard to think clearly when your mind has been clouded by despair. I feel terrible for Art, his swirling, desolate emotions, pushed too far. I wish to make it known that I care for you all deeply. Forte's melancholic voice stung my heart. Missy and Ashley themselves had a wistful look in their eyes as they nodded in assent. We hardly knew each other, but I could feel the bond of our adversity bringing us closer together, our camaraderie knit together by taut strings of fear. If I may, as a precaution, I suggest no one travel alone. It's too dangerous to be without a witness in the event something were to happen. It's not a thought I wish to entertain, but such steps may be necessary if we're going to be at the forefront of the Killing Game's unpredictability. I agree. And not only that, Cyrus's intense behavior could pose a potential problem. That is one thing that Zero left us with. He seemed to suggest that Cyrus is not to be trusted, though he could also just as easily be trying to plant, again, seeds of suspicion and doubt. What happened with Cyrus? Well, after the trial, you recall what Zero said, correct? Yeah. Cyrus Suryk is someone to be wary of. Ultimate Charisma is a terrible cover talent. After you collapsed, he started acting suspiciously. It seems I've garnered some distrust among you all. No thanks to that lousy Zero. Cyrus, what is Zero talking about? There's no use hiding it. I think a reintroduction is only appropriate. Cyrus Suryk, ultimate confidential informant for the Preservation Project. Confidential informant. So he is possibly the insider that we were concerned about earlier. You're with the Preservation Project? Of course. I rallied you all here after all. So what's with the facade? You're in this game too, after all. Did you think you could keep up the niceties all the way through? That's for me to know. And all you need to know is this. You were all doomed from the moment you set foot here. I know for a fact, nothing you do will save you from this game. And then he crept out of the courtroom, leaving us all confused to say the least. After that, Missy and I rushed you to my room so you could get your rest. Say and Cannon have been unresponsive all evening. I don't know how Lila's faring, but he's likely in similarly despondent shape. They've retired to their rooms as far as I know. However, if anyone would like to explore, find a partner to keep yourself safe. I can't guarantee everyone's safety, nor can I force everyone to follow my lead, but I hope you know I wish for everyone's safety. Missy was strained. She wished to protect everyone, but it was difficult since none of us knew what would happen next. I'm awfully curious about something, though. As we were returning to the foyer from the courtroom, I noticed there was a button for the 3rd floor lit in the elevator. Okay, so, yep. So after the first trial, a new floor has opened up. 3rd floor. I saw that too. Missy, did you want to investigate the 3rd floor? It's late, but I did want to make a brief round to see what's in store for us. I'll come with you. Echo, did you want to go back to your room for some proper rest? I imagine you've been quite fatigued lately. My stomach was in a knot. I didn't want to leave Ashley. No, it's fine, I'll come with you. I feel kind of restless anyway. Walking around could help. Okay, but don't push yourself, alright? I nodded slowly. If you folks are going to explore, would you mind seeing me off to my living quarters? Missy and Ashley obliged, and we all left the dining hall together. In the foyer, we saw Forte off, as he retired for the night in his personal room. Entering the elevator again, we traveled to the 3rd floor that had recently opened up. After a low rumbling, the elevator stopped, revealing the new area. A digital kiosk was just outside the elevator, displaying a map of the grounds as we approached. Oh wow. Casino, Smokehouse Lounge, Garage. Art gallery, garage on the 3rd floor. That's a weird place for a garage. And living quarters up here. More of them. The 3rd floor landing hall led to a single main hall that split into 4 rooms, 2 on each side. 4 new activity amenities are available to us. On the left, there's a smoke lounge connected to a casino, and on the right is an art gallery connected to a garage. But of course, they're closed to us from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. However, Missy's voice trailed off. I followed her gaze to the smaller hallways that surrounded the perimeter of the main activity rooms. Familiar doors dotted the hallway. An unknown school emblem decorated the door, but Missy's eyes were transfixed on one. And Ashley herself was looking at another door that bore a similar emblem on it that I had seen on the race car helmet earlier. Oh. Huh? There was another full set of personal rooms on the 3rd floor. Like I said, it was odd that there were only 10 of us at the start, as opposed to the usual 16. And again, it was noted there were 16 chairs set up in the dining hall. Is this where those other 6 are at then? Missy and Ashley looked at each other with astonishment. They swiftly ran to their respective doors, but before they could do anything... I see you've met the rest of your classmates. Cyrus is here. His flat, disembodied voice sent a chill up my spine. The 2 of them swung around to see Cyrus in a dark corner of the hallway. Cyrus continued, disregarding Missy and Ashley's grim faces. It's too late. Silva and Darling, they're out of the picture. Huh? Ashley and Missy reacted to the respective names. I remember Ashley telling me about Silva, so the other unknown was in relation to Missy. The atmosphere was suddenly heavy with paralyzing glares sent every which way. Why do you know this? What exactly do you plan to do with those threats? He He shrugged indifferently, unconcerned with answering the questions tossed his way. Cyrus, who are you? I'm the Preservation Project's informant. I was chosen to handpick the class that appears for this game. His leering eyes pierced the very air between us. But Echo Pine, they're different. I was immobilized at the sudden mention of my name. I didn't even know if I was breathing. The three stood at a stalemate, a palpable dread feeling radiating from their deadlocked eyes. Please, stop your facade. Facade? You all heard Zero in the trial. The Cyrus you knew before wasn't the real me. He blew my cover, so I'm here in full form. Cyrus let his threat linger. The astringent potential for disaster amassed a lead weight at the bottom of my stomach. Missy and Ashley closed in on either side of me, bracing themselves against his possible machinations. But he just sulked away, Cyrus's husky, low laugh melting into the darkness. I was dizzy with fear, but Missy's firm voice kept me grounded. Hurry, let's return to the living quarters. She grabbed my hand, leading me through the dark toward the elevator that was some ways behind us. We hustled into the elevator and rode back to the main foyer. Back in the foyer, soft light from the chandelier glittered, delicately lighting the main hall. There we crossed paths with Cannon, who was isolated in the foyer once again. Cannon? Ashley's voice was a whisper that didn't seem to reach Cannon's ears. We slowly approached her and saw her cold expression. But her face gave off a different demeanor somehow. Rather than the icy gaze, we were met with a stony, soulless stare. Cannon, are you alright? I saw her come to, her eyes softening as she turned toward us. She murmured a quiet affirmation. Her cold exterior melted into a brief moment of vulnerability. Then my curiosity got the better of me, and I capitalized on the brevity of silence. Cannon, I have to know. Why did you run away when I collapsed from electrocution? It's only natural to feel fear when you see someone get hurt. Huh? I was frightened. It's odd. I wanted to leave this mansion as soon as I woke up, but something stopped me. She gripped the instant camera she had hung on a short wrist strap. When I woke in my personal room with only this camera in my possession, I couldn't help but feel unnerved. So I stood in the foyer, wanting to leave, but felt unable to due to a mysterious, bad feeling. And as it turns out, that feeling was right. After I saw you scream and collapse, my suspicions were confirmed, but I didn't know what to do. I waited for someone, anyone to come and see you so they could handle it. Forte. You know what happens from there. I left someone else to help you because I didn't want to deal with that event. Though her face was no less intelligible than before, her voice was shaking. She was just as scared, if not more, than I was. She desperately wanted to protect herself from being the one who would point out the culprit as long as possible, knowing she couldn't delay the inevitable revelation. Right, she had a key piece of evidence the whole time, but... Cannon sighed heavily. Excuse me, I'm going to bed. Cannon briskly walked toward the living quarters. Missy and Ashley gave Cannon a soft goodnight each as she retired for the night. With nothing left to do in the dark of the night, we followed suit to our individual rooms. Ashley stopped me for a moment in the living quarters hall. Echo, let's take care of each other, yeah? Of course. That doesn't need saying. Ashley mumbled something but cut herself off. Instead, she just gave me a hug. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to be swathed in the comfort of her embrace. Good night, Echo. Good night, Ash. Entering my personal room, I felt more alienated. This personal room. The comfort and luxury must have been fabricated, creating a false sense of comfort. Behind that sense of comfort, a facade of terror and malice was hiding, a killing game with no remorse for the participants. I shook the nerves out and collapsed on the bed. I want to go to bed for a long, long, long time. Exhaustion overcame me, and another day would come to pass. So begins day 4 then. Okay. Alright, chapter 2 officially begins. Knock, knock. I opened my eyes at the sound of knocking. Pardon me, but good morning. It's Missy Vesper, outside for Echo. I looked at the time. 7:29. Good morning, Missy. I'll be right out. Take your time. I stopped the alarm before it rang and made myself presentable. I stepped out of my personal room to greet Missy. I noticed she was clutching a small item folded in cloth. But before I could ask about it, she started through the halls, and I followed alongside her. What's going on? I'm gathering students for a personal announcement. I will elaborate when we arrive in the foyer. She raised the small item, indicating it was going to be the subject of her meeting. You're the last student I approached. Those who won't be present did not answer when I knocked. However, when I approached Say, she replied through the door that she wasn't going to move at all. She said, if she was going to die, it would happen regardless of what she did. What? It was a shockingly fatalistic thing to say, but I wasn't going to force her out. That girl, Say worries me. Do you think she'll do something dangerous? Was she the one who had that similar note that Pandora had, that was hidden in the pantry that then Lyle found later? I'm sorry, I meant that I worry for her well-being. I don't wish to be too demanding in any case. She may be offended or take it the wrong way, but... She seemed upset that she couldn't do anything to help Say. I'm sure Say appreciates the sentiment. We just do what we can, right? I apologize. You're absolutely correct. Missy's expression eased as we finally arrived in the main foyer. In the foyer, I saw the small group of students Missy gathered. The group was composed of Forte, Cannon, Ashley, Missy, and myself. So Lyle, Cyrus, and Say couldn't make it. Cyrus, pretty obvious why he wouldn't respond. Lyle also making himself scarce, though. I'm not surprised Cyrus is absent, given his behavior last night. And Lyle should be a person of concern as well, since he was so distraught from the conclusion we came to, discovering Art was the culprit behind Pandora's death. Art just wanted to protect us. It's not his fault Pandora had an incredibly suspicious note. I don't imagine seeing her with the note helped, what with his head being so full of distress. I wonder... will that note... play into things further on? That note is fairly damning. I never would have thought she would be in possession of such an oddity. But despite that, I feel like she had good intentions behind it. She specifically pulled me aside the night before to ask if I knew anything about the contents. That doesn't seem like something a mole would do, right? We pondered the source of the note, but we couldn't presume much about it without the strange item in our hands. Our morning was already off to a rocky start. Ah. That brings me to what I've gathered you all here for. Missy had the floor, taking place facing the elevator at the centerpiece table, while the rest of us encircled the opposite side. Please, do not be alarmed when I show you this. She placed the small cloth-wrapped item she had been carrying on the wooden table. Oh. Okay, a gun and a card of some kind? It was a revolver with a note. Missy, what's the meaning of this? I told Echo before, but I'll reiterate for the rest of you as well. I had plans to contribute my skills to the preservation project prior to the events of arriving here. However, upon arrival in my personal room, I found this revolver. Read the note tied to the handle. Cannon looked over and carefully read from afar. As a student interested in working with the preservation project, one must attempt their hand in a single round of reverse Russian roulette. We believe every ultimate student, should they be destined to live and change the world, will surpass the incredible game of chance no matter the odds. Reverse Russian roulette? A game of unbelievable chance. Is this what I think it is? 5 out of 6 chambers in the gun are occupied with a bullet. The player is to spin the chamber, lock the chamber in, place the gun barrel against their own head, pull the trigger, and hope to survive. Okay, just like Nagito in the final dead game in Danganronpa 2 then. Without the knowledge of whether or not a bullet will be fired, your life is in the hands of fate. Again, that was pointed out that in that case you would have only a 1 out of 6 chance of surviving then. Huh? That's absurd! What are the possible odds of someone surviving that? The odds are far too high to take a chance on. One would have to be inconceivably fortunate. Or be the ultimate lucky student. You didn't play, right? Who would dare risk such a gamble if they weren't certain they would survive? Missy's jaw clenched. Did she really not play the round? That said, I'm showing my hand because I want to suspend my disbelief. Huh? I sincerely want to trust you all. So I hope you can trust me as well after I've revealed this wretched thing. I wish for you to believe that no danger is to be contrived for me, as I have no intention to harm any of you. She carefully folded the cloth back over the revolver. Have any of you heard of a concept called the Stockdale Paradox? I can't say I have. I'll explain. It is a philosophy of duality. Named after a vice presidential candidate, the Stockdale Paradox is a concept in which one must never lose faith that they will prevail in the end, while still confronting the cruel facts of their reality. It is a paradox of the self. An individual has to be able to balance the horrors of reality with the optimism of success to truly be able to overcome the worst situations. This mindset, the acknowledgement of two opposing sides, is paramount in achieving one's goals. One mustn't get so hopeful they ignore the gravity of their grave surroundings. In our case, we must balance the hope that we will escape the clutches of this place against the despair of ultimate death within the walls. The four of us were petrified. Hope? Despair? It was hard to process. Those two words, though. Thank you for placing your trust in us, Missy. We will not let you down. Cannon remained silent, but nodded in agreement at Forte's statement. Thanks, Missy. You're risking a lot, but if none of us plan to kill, then there really shouldn't be anything to worry about. Of course, there shouldn't be anything to worry about. We're all reasonable people, but fear is a powerful tool. By showing you this item and telling you my intentions, I hope to dispel any fear among us. I see. Thank you for your cooperation and understanding. I couldn't believe how bold Missy was being. She could have easily left the gun in her room, out of sight, essentially out of our realm of existence, where no one could cause harm with it. But she was venturing with high hopes that our group truly had no ill will. Everyone agreed, no one would dare fire the gun. Even so, in a game of killing, a weapon presented itself seemingly out of nowhere. Stranger so, it seemed like some students were left some sort of item in their rooms upon waking up. Right. Yeah, Ashley with the helmet, Pandora with that note, possibly Say with the other note. Yeah, Cannon remarking upon her camera, Ashley having Silva's racing helmet, finally Missy with a revolver. But I also recall Forte having something that was seemingly out of place from the mansion. When he took care of me after I was shocked, he had... Oh, what? Was it a scarf? He had a scarf draped over his shoulders since I first met him. That's right. He was leafing through some sheet music. I wonder, what was the meaning of this? What? As I pondered the strange trend, the sound of glass shattering filled the room. Didn't sound like glass shattering. Our group glanced at each other for a moment, before running off to the source of the sound. Through the dining hall and into the kitchen, the sound persisted louder and louder. There we found Lyle, and the kitchen itself in a state of disarray. Broken glass and battered metal littered the floor as Lyle clutched a metal pipe, aiming for the oven. The hell? Lyle, what on earth are you doing? Have you lost your mind? What's it look like I'm doing? I'm testing the rules. Oh, that's right. That's destroying the destroying property is against the rules. The rules state we are not to damage major assets, yet here I am, breaking everything. And so far nothing's happened. Don't you understand? The rules aren't enforced. Art wouldn't have had to kill Pandora. He wouldn't have had to die by our vote. In the circumstance of a game, rules are placed to create restriction, and yet there's no arbiter or custodian or mastermind here to punish us for breaking the rules. So why should we be following the rules in the first place? We thought our lives were threatened since we were trapped by that electrocuting door. Did that even actually happen? What do you mean? Of course it happened. Why would I lie about something like that? You were the only one who was afflicted by it. For all I know, Echo, you're the mastermind behind this. Oh no, he's... What? You collapsed, and Forte, in his good-natured heart, came running to your aid. That collapse could have been entirely fake. Because of that, we were simply trapped by our own fears. Be that as it may, the fact remains that the door was armed and is currently barricaded. There can't be no reason for that. Despite Forte's observation, Lyle ignored him. He was completely absorbed in his thoughts. Art didn't have to die. He didn't have to die. He didn't have to die! He was muttering to himself as his grip tightened on the pipe. Lyle's eyes gleamed with intent. Those enraged eyes locked onto mine as he dropped the pipe, the metal crushing the glass debris into dust. I'm not gonna die. Not after him. I think we know what that is. With impeccable timing, an announcement rang through the halls. It is now game. And welcome to day 4 of 7. We're already halfway through. How exciting! However, there are far too many people alive right now, and we need to fix that. Today's forced motive question is... Do you believe your talent can befit all of humanity? Yes, as ultimate students at the top of your field, society will expect you to contribute yourselves and respective talents to the world as a whole. Ponder this question as we set up our next motive for you all. Coming soon to ultimate students everywhere. I listened to the announcement as best I could, but the rest of the group paid no attention. Instead, they were trying to calm Lyle after his spiel. Lyle, we want to leave too, believe me, but we should put our heads together and come up with a plan instead of wrecking everything. No, you'll only get in the way. Lyle aggressively pushed his way through us, leaving the dining hall for the foyer, with Missy giving chase. Lyle, stop it! Stop following me! I alone will piece together the secrets of this awful killing game if I'm not the ultimate puzzle master. Cyrus was right. If I don't act now, nothing will get done. Cyrus? You spoke to Cyrus? I ran into him this morning in the kitchen. He doesn't concern me in the slightest. With how Cyrus is behaving now, there's no telling what will happen next. You really ought to be careful around him. Lyle ignored Missy's plea and marched over to the elevator, slamming the buttons. He turned around and held up a fist with a crumpled piece of paper in it. I swear, I will find the other person who knows the secrets of this note. Oh, is that the same one that... The one from before? That's the only clue Art left me, and damn it, I will do whatever it takes to get to the bottom of this. Lyle gave us one last parting glare before entering the elevator. The elevator doors closed, leaving the rest of us in a state of bewilderment. With Lyle on edge as it is, a talk with Cyrus sounds like a recipe for disaster. What do you suppose he's going to try now? only surmised Lyle might be going to the third floor to scour the area for the other students. It's a new location that needs to be turned over, after all. Forte and Missy sighed in unison. Let us hope he doesn't do anything reckless. But just after Forte said that, I heard footsteps at the top of the stairs. Cyrus. Cyrus replied in a nonchalant manner, but his face was different. In the light of day, Cyrus's expression was twisted into something disconcerting. Missy and Cyrus exchanged fierce looks once more, only this time the two of their emotions were catalyzed. Before we could react, Missy moved swiftly to pursue Cyrus at the top of the stairs. Missy, wait! What are you doing? Ashley went to chase after her, but Missy's firm voice stopped Ashley in her tracks. Don't worry. I'm confident nothing will happen here. I'd like a word with this informant. She announced her vague plan as she arrived at the top of the stairs and forcefully grabbed Cyrus by the arm. Cyrus didn't say a word. Rather, he just made a disgusted face as Missy pushed him into the jazz club. She slammed the door and silence befell the group. Should we be concerned? Missy has a plan. I have faith she'll carry it out to execution with the least casualties. Yeah, Miss Ultimate Tactician probably has some cards up her sleeve. Let's just leave her be. Cannon made a rather snide remark, but that said, it seemed like everyone was confident that Missy had a plan, seeing as no one went to pursue her. I hate it in here. Why don't we carry on the investigation ourselves? Investigation? Of what? The mansion. We still haven't found a way out of this place. I agree. The third floor opened up to us last night, so there could be an opportunity for escape. Well, I doubt that. Cannon, would you care to join me? Missy proposed traveling in pairs to protect ourselves, so if I may... Sure. With a stern reply, Cannon briskly began escalating the foyer stairs. Excuse us. Forte followed suit, which left me and Ashley in the foyer. We should check out the third floor again now that the amenities are open. And hopefully we will find those other students. Her voice was low. Ashley was pale with worry. There were signs of her friend Silva being there as well, the helmet in his personal room on the third floor. But the fact that we hadn't run into anyone for 3 days was cause for concern. I didn't want to say anything, though. Ash, I'm sure we'll find Silva and the others. Ashley's eyes softened. Thanks, Echo. She gave me a smile once more before starting toward the stairs. I began to follow, but something was tugging at me. Hey, Ash? Should we take the gun? Oh, right, Missy left it there, didn't she? Ashley hesitated. I think we should trust Missy. We should trust everyone. It's ridiculous, though. I mean, trust. Such a lofty and intangible concept. Who can say whether or not someone will uphold it? Echo. Are you saying you won't? Of course not. It's just... Then that's that. Huh? Missy wants to believe in us. And I'm guessing from our observed behavior during the trial last night, she has no reason to believe any of us are malicious. In fact, the one person she thinks is the most dangerous is Cyrus, and she's dealing with him personally. She placed our trust in us. Now, we just have to trust her. It's a give and take. I see. Trust. I ponder the concept as we made our way toward the third floor. I have a bad feeling about this, though. Upon arriving at the third floor, Ashley and I saw Cannon and Forte just entering the garage. Ashley herself revisited the floor with Silva's school emblem and tugged at the doorknob. Locked. Figures. She knocked lightly a couple of times, but to no avail. Her eyes were dark. Hey, maybe those other students are just gathered somewhere else in the building. It's a pretty big place. This whole floor was hidden from us for a while, after all. Ashley snapped out of her trance. Her concerned gaze met mine. Yeah, we'll see them soon enough. She lightly caressed the door before returning to my side. Well, let's see if we can't find anything on this floor. Cannon and Forte just went into the garage, so why don't we check the other rooms in the meantime? Try the casino first. We visited the casino, a dim room with an expensive design. Among the room pairs, this room is connected to the smoking lounge by a set of double doors on its left wall. A casino. I suppose it pairs well with the smoking lounge. I guess some kind of ultimate gambler... I suppose some kind of ultimate gambler would thrive here, but still. Like Celeste. This, along with the smoking lounge, seems a bit out of our depth. Well, we're not here for the recreation. Let's see what we can find. We split up and searched between the rows of slot machines that lined one side of the room, and the card tables that occupied the opposite. The slot machines spun listlessly as they sat idly by. The card tables themselves looked rather lonely. No chips or cards adorned the felt. I paced through the room twice over, but didn't spot anything of note. Ashley seemed to be out of sorts. I wanted to talk and take her mind off her worries for a little bit. So, I suppose I did have an ultimate talent after all. What do you suppose I'm meant to do with it? Well, it helped during the trial. That aside, I'm not even sure what kind of practical uses it has. Ashley fell quiet, instead focusing her attention on investigating the room at hand. At a loss, we decided to move on. Let's see. Oh, we're right next to the smoke lounge. We entered the smoking lounge, a large room with a rustic design. Among the room pairs, this room was connected to the casino by a set of double doors on its right wall. Immediately upon entering, we were met with a heavy, ashy odor. I covered my nose to block the smell, but the air itself felt thick and suffocating. So has this room been used already? Echo, are you okay? I'm fine. I wasn't expecting the air to be so dry. Let's try and make this quick. What kind of group would allow students to access to a smoking lounge? That seems irresponsible. Yeah, what kind of ultimate talent could utilize this room anyway? Who knows? Let's just take a quick look for some sort of exit and move on. I glazed over the room from one end to the other with a single sweeping look. It was a decadent-looking set. The leather seating and fine woodcraft tables were cozy, each table housing a small candle for a comforting effect. The far wall had shelves upon shelves of fine beverages locked behind a glass case, with a bar to match on the opposite side. It was a highly refined atmosphere overall that felt rather unwelcoming to those of us who didn't indulge in this sort of recreation. I poked around in areas I thought may be suspicious, but didn't really know what to look for. I wanted to try again. Lyle probably has some trick to memorizing different puzzle block patterns. I could ask him, right? Yeah, I think there's usually some kind of math involved, so there's that. Finding nothing fruitful of note, we move to our next location. That just leaves us with the art gallery. Crossing the third-floor hall, we came upon the spacious art gallery. Among the room pairs, this room was connected to the garage by a set of double doors on its right wall. It's very picturesque and modern. Yeah, the whole environment is really inviting. Could some kind of exit or clue really be hidden in a place like this, though? Guess we'll find out. The art gallery was situated in a warehouse-styled room. The high open ceilings adorned with bright lights gave way to several painted canvases that decorated the walls. Large, colorful work tables were lined up in the center, facing a small stage that held a sculpture up for the artist to see. Off to the side was an inset closet stocked with shelves chock full of supplies. We kept coming up short in our investigation, shuffling the lengths of the rooms in silence. I stopped peppering Ashley with questions pertaining to my talent. She clearly wasn't in any mood to address it. Oh, Echo. Ashley sighed. This whole ultimate debacle, such a thing has no bearing on what we have. You don't need to find any sort of use for the talent. I couldn't tell you what all a jockey could do for the future. About the motive question. Was it too much to simply wish for safety? Then in return we must contribute everything in our power to get something so basic? I wish the project weren't so incessantly utilitarian about our talents. Another heavy sigh. Pandora said something like that on the third day in response to the forced motive question, that baking was simply her passion. Sorry, the talent assignment was so weird and out of nowhere. To be honest, I'm not even sure I believe it. I just wanted to take your mind off. I let the sentence hang. I didn't know where to go from there. Thanks, Echo. We kept looking. The 3 rooms we visited were stocked with a decadent supply of recreation, but the fact that we couldn't find an exit or any signs of life were cause for concern. Our entrapment felt more and more isolating with each discovery. There's one more room to check. I wonder if Cannon and Forte have finished their investigation. No reason not to join them if they haven't. Oh, wow. Ashley and I entered the garage through its heavy double doors. There weren't any signs of Forte or Cannon in the room. The garage was another warehouse-sized room that housed a large collection of vehicles. Vehicles of various makes and models lined the warehouse like a row of soldiers. The luster of each steel body gleamed proudly under the beams of display lights. Car collection. Kazuichi would have loved this. Huh? I turned around to see Ashley shaking. Is this a joke? Oh, is one of these cars... This is some kind of sick joke, isn't it? I went to Ashley's side, but was shrugged away as she stumbled toward a cobalt blue race car. It's his car, isn't it? She laid her hands on the hood of the car and stared a hole through the windshield. This is Silva's car. The look on her face was filled with mixed emotions. Oh no. I gripped her shoulders firmly and shook her out of her daze. Ash, snap out of it! Ashley blinked and took a step back, but her head was hanging low. Echo, this is a sign. It can't simply be a coincidence, can it? Her voice trailed off. It seems we came to the same conclusion. It was entirely possible that Silva was also captured, made to play a killing game. But she would never want to hear that. Ashley, all these signs must be set up to get a rise out of you. Huh? Think about it. The mysterious group infiltrated the Preservation Project and kidnapped us. They must have known about your fight with Silva and are using it against you, using it to vex you, to motivate you into doing something horrible. They're playing mind games with you, Ashley. You don't have to worry about Silva. I told her these things, but they were all a lie. Even so, I couldn't stand to see her in such despair. Ashley rubbed her eyes and I saw her body relax. Yeah, you could be right. She sniffled out a voice of gratitude. Thanks, Echo. What are friends for? Gave her a small hug. I'm gonna step out into the hall for a bit if you want to keep looking. Alright, I won't be long then. I let Ashley gather her bearings outside as I gave the garage a brief walkthrough. Unsurprisingly, I found nothing. I left the garage, disgruntled at the lack of clues for escape. Out in the main hall, I spotted Ashley in the midst of conversation with Missy. Echo, you might want to hear this. Huh? What is it? As you know, I had a conversation with Cyrus. Yeah, that was kind of scary. But I'm glad to see you're alright. Worry not, I'm here in one piece. I want to bring your attention his strange behavior. You see, I tried to reason with him, to talk to him from one person to another, but it's almost as if after he was exposed, he's been putting on a facade. I'm sorry, it's difficult for me to explain this gut feeling I have about him, but I have my suspicions. Zero said ultimate charisma wasn't the real Cyrus, but could it be the other way around? Huh. The other way around? What do you mean? I was thinking, when Zero uncovered Cyrus's false intent, revealing his true title, Cyrus's behavior became stilted and insincere. Perhaps charisma truly isn't his talent, but his behavior under that title seemed organic. My apologies, I'm just thinking out loud. So what is his angle? Although I'd see for myself, I wanted to talk some sense at him, but he remains steadfast and stubbornly irksome. If he continues to behave strangely, we might have another tragedy on our hands. I agree. I didn't want to be too hasty, but might I suggest we try to extract information from him with force? Oh, with force? Missy's expression sharpened as she made a definitive decision. I could see her eyes glazing through a plan of action. I will use the gun to threaten him into talking. Oh. Make no mistake, I have absolutely no intention of firing it, but Cyrus doesn't need to know that. In that case, let me help you. I'll get rope from the climbing center to bind him in case he thinks of doing something funny. Excellent. I was shocked, but Ashley and Missy were both in agreement. Ashley, quickly, let us make preparations and rendezvous here promptly. We mustn't waste any time with Cyrus roaming around freely. Ashley nodded. The three of us sped down the stairs and split up at the second floor landing. Missy continued further down. Ashley and I took a sharp turn toward the climbing center. I was struggling to keep up, but eventually closed the distance between us as she dug through the lockers in search of rope. Isn't this too extreme? Look, it sounds harsh, but it's necessary to prevent further killing. The last thing I would want is to not keep an eye on Cyrus and have you get killed, Echo. No single soul is exempt from death. There's no gray area about it. I understand that, but... Uh-oh. Before I could finish my thought, a shot was heard ringing through the air. The shot sounded like it came from above. Missy? She must have encountered Cyrus before us. Ashley wrapped a bundle of rope around her forearm, grabbed my hand once more, and darted up the stairs toward the third floor. She stopped me at the foot of the stairs and cautiously looked around the corner at the main hallway. The sound of another shot exploded through the air. It sounded like it came from the smoking lounge. What was going on? Before I realized what was happening, I felt my body move on its own. Ashley had thrown the art gallery's doors open and forced me in. Ash, what on earth are you doing? She slammed the doors between us as I stumbled in. Echo, take cover here and don't move a muscle until I get back. She commanded me from the other side of the door as I tried to steady my footing. In my state of dishevelment, I stayed put, not knowing what else to do. I heard her footsteps soften as she put furthering distance between us. Missy? I was shaking. A third shot. I hurtled toward the door. I couldn't help but fear the worst, attempting to pry the doors open. The doors wouldn't budge. Did she lock it? Upon closer inspection, the doors had no keyhole or latch that would keep them locked. Or did she bar it with something? Locked? How? I looked around hastily for something to help me get out. Oh yeah, the garage is connected to the art gallery. I can leave through there. I ran to the double doors that led to the garage and tugged. That door too. Looking again, these double doors had nothing preventing them from being opened. Somehow, both sets of double doors have been blocked. No way. How could this be happening? I gasped, collapsing to the ground at the inexplicable situation I found myself in. Missy. It's possible Missy was out there with the gun. Was that a fourth shot? Confronting Ashley. I felt a cold sweat forming on my face. Missy, you asked us to trust you. I couldn't believe how stupid I was for believing in trust. I should have picked up the gun when it was in the foyer. Trust. Footsteps. I heard footsteps from the main hall side of the doors. Lyle, you must be a raving madman if you think you can run around the building alone. Don't know who this is talking then. I'm not doing anything suspicious. I'm doing everything I can to get us out of here, unlike the rest of you. And what were you doing poking around in one of the third floor personal rooms anyway? How do you even get in there? That is none of your business. Voices. I heard faint voices from the main hall side of the art gallery. I sprung up from the floor and banged on the door from inside the art gallery. Hey, whoever's out there, let me out! I hammered on the door until my fist fell through the air. Echo! Say it, and she's holding... Is that rope she's got? Say was on the other side of the door holding a bundle of rope. There's no time to explain. I was falling all over myself, running toward the sound of the shots. Everything was a blur as I darted across the hall to the smoking lounge and threw the door open. Cyrus is dead. Wow, I didn't... Cyrus's body was lying face up, blood staining his torso and hands. Wasn't expecting him this early. I sharply inhaled and trembled at the sight. Ah! Seish shook out a small, startled response before disappearing from the smoking lounge entirely. I stood rooted in place, fear and confusion paralyzing me. The smoking lounge was in a complete state of chaos, with Cyrus's bloody body drawing my gaze. Furniture was strewn about. Glass cabinets were shattered and fabric sprinkled the messy floor. My head stung. The miasma of alcohol rushed in my senses, mixed with the thick odor of smoke and metallic scent of blood, created an awful nausea-inducing headache. The double doors that connected the smoking lounge to the casino was ajar. A morbid curiosity took hold. I cautiously approached the slight opening. I pushed slowly and oh no. Oh, oh no. Ashley's body was strewn on the floor, blood staining her hands. Chapter 2 being the... And what I said earlier about Ashley, oh god. Well, that was, foreboding. All my instincts escaped me and my mind went completely blank. White noise filled my thoughts. I crumpled to the floor beside her, but my hands wouldn't go anywhere near Ashley's body. Okay. Oh god, with that... Hang on. Okay, with that, give me a few minutes and we'll be back. Okay, and we're back. So, this is really moving along pretty quickly now. I feel like Chapter 2 has just started, and we've already had not one but two murders. Which, usually they save that for Chapter 3, but in this case, Cyrus and Ashley have been killed. I mean, again, like I said before, I had a feeling between Echo and Ashley, one of them wasn't getting out alive. Seems like I was proven right. Anyways, a slam intruded my daze. Cannon and Forte closed in on Ashley's body and were voicing their concern, but I heard nothing. My senses were scrambled. The only thing I heard above the murmur of their voices was... the eerie chime indicating... Body has been discovered in the smoking lounge. You'll be granted a period of investigation, and then we'll begin our class trial. Please accept this generous gift of a special report called the Monokuma File. It will be printed from the digital kiosk, and it outlines the details of our poor lost friend. Your lives depend on solving this case, so get a crack on. I could feel my whole body shaking. I couldn't take my eyes off Ashley's body. The body discovery announcement, and Ashley's body. Did that mean... I heard footsteps approach from behind. Okay, so that was... So that body discovery announcement was for Cyrus, then. Missy crouched down beside me and rested her hand on my back, lightly shaking me. Echo! Echo! I couldn't respond. I just sat on the floor staring. Missy reached past me, toward Ashley's body. Missy, could it be? Oh, is Echo gonna suspect her? Life moved in slow motion as I tried to connect what I'd heard outside the gallery to the horrible scene at hand. Missy carefully moved Ashley's hair and gently placed 2 fingers at the side of her neck. Missy, don't you dare touch her! She's alive. Oh! She's alive? My heart was pumping and I felt new life breathed into me as I processed the revelation. Look, her bracelet isn't a neon pink. Oh, right. With Pandora, it changed color when they died. Her pulse is extremely weak, but Ashley is alive nonetheless. Isn't there an infirmary somewhere? She needs attention, quickly! I'll check the casino kiosk for a map. Cannon swiftly left as the rest of us gazed in astonishment. My stare remained on Ashley's bracelet. Missy was right, it remained the same light rose gold color as mine, unlike when Pandora's turned neon pink. Even if that were the case, what was wrong with her? I searched for an infirmary on the kiosk, but it only displays the floors that we've been to. Then does that mean there isn't one? No, there is an infirmary, but the infirmary's connected to the courtroom. My body kicked into action as I sprinted out of the casino toward the 3rd floor elevator and slammed the buttons. Echo! I need to get her out of here! Take me to the courtroom! I shouted at nothing as the elevator doors refused to open. I continued to hit the buttons fruitlessly. Echo, please. I know it'll be difficult, but it seems we must investigate in order to gain access to the courtroom. Missy had followed me all the way out here. We wouldn't want to enter the trial without preparing ourselves, therefore we must work quickly if we're going to bring Ashley back. Please. I slammed my forehead against the elevator door in defeat. Damn it. Ashley. I let out an immense, heavy sigh. My chest heaved and I felt my breath escape in shaky, broken pieces. I'll do whatever it takes. I dragged my feet as Missy and I made our way to the crime scene. We're doing this again. This horrible, horrible thing. Searching for the culprit behind this sickening scene only to put them on the chopping block for the game to continue anew afterward. The cycle was torturous. Ugh. Despite that, Ashley was alive. I tried to clear my head. Yes, Ashley was barely hanging by a thread of life, but she was alive regardless. I need to figure out who did this. Someone took Cyrus's life and threatened Ashley's. There's no gray area about it. Forte propped open the double doors that kept the smoke lounge and casino separated so we could move freely between them. In the smoking lounge, Lyle stood, looming over Cyrus's body. Say was in the smoking lounge as well, gazing at the body from a distance. In the casino, Forte put Ashley in a recovery position and was monitoring her. Cannon was standing between the rooms, glaring at the trail of debris. Missy went to investigate the smoking lounge, and I was left to look on my own. Okay. Okay, there's the casino there. A fuel canister? What would that be doing here? Presumably that was taken from the garage. It's the only place I can think of. A blowtorch. The kiosk. We haven't... The kiosk has been knocked over. There's a faint streak of blood on the screen. It appears to be broken. How do you figure? Well, what? Really? I'm just taking a shot in the dark, but I think the Monokuma file was printed from the casino kiosk because this one wasn't operational. Cannon has the victim report if you want to take a look. Probably some technology involving proximity or some such. I really couldn't say since that sort of thing is out of my depth. I wonder if the kiosk being knocked over has anything to do specifically with what happened here. I can't say. The streak of blood implies it may have been interacted with. But to what extent is beyond me. The kiosk being knocked over may have just been a casualty during whatever struggle occurred here, but the streak bothered me. Both Cyrus and Ashley had blood on their hands. Okay. Let me see. The gun wound was front and center in Cyrus's chest. Blood had soaked through his shirt. The deep pigment inundated the cloth and oozed onto the carpet. The gun wound was very clearly told his cause of death. But my eyes were more curiously drawn to Cyrus's blood-stained hands. The blood could have only come from one source, his wound. He must have tried in vain to stop the gun wound from bleeding out. I trembled at the thought of what ended up being a futile act. Yeah, and there's the gun lying there. And there's blood smeared on the handle. Missy's revolver, the weapon that took Cyrus's life. The gun handle is covered in blood. 4 shots were fired, leaving 1 bullet. Quite a few people knew about the gun, so it might be difficult to determine who went to retrieve it. Can we speak with... Where is... Oh, right. Wait, can I... How do I... Can I... Oh, there we go. Okay. Lyle looked particularly aggravated. This place is a mess. There's no mistaking the fact that a struggle occurred. That seems to be the case. It's a shame I wasn't closer when this took place, even after I swept the 3rd floor earlier this morning. I managed to miss something as big as this. Call it bad timing. We did hear somebody talking to Lyle out in the hall while this was taking place. Wonder what relation that has to this. About that, where were you this afternoon after the fact? Huh? Are you suspecting me? Well, no, it would just help to know where you were so we can say you're in the clear. I was with Say. Say? But didn't she keep herself locked up in her room all day? Beats me. All I know is after I heard the second gunshot sound from somewhere upstairs, I saw Say poke her head out of her room. I dragged her out for my safety and hauled her around with me to find out where the shots were coming from. We were on the 2nd floor by the time a 3rd shot went off. See, you two can vouch for each other's whereabouts. Yeah, what of it? Nothing. So, Lyle has an alibi that's been verified by Say. I should talk to Say to see if their stories line up. What puzzles me the most is where did a gun even come from? Well, I don't expect you to believe me, but it was in Missy's possession. She brought it out to boldly state that she would not be firing it. She even recommended that we travel in groups in any case, something bad happened, so even if by the off chance someone did fire it, we'd be in groups, able to witness alongside our partner. Lyle was astonished. Really? What kind of tactician would reveal her hand like that? I mean, it was a symbol of trust in a way. I'm certainly not going to use it to cause harm, and I really don't think Missy would. That aside, it almost seems like she was micromanaging everyone's expectations and locations by doing so. Lyle just scoffed and continued to loom over Cyrus's body. So, 4 shots were fired. 4 out of the 5 existing bullets in that gun's chamber. 4 shots. I noticed, however, there are 3 holes in the wall of the smoking lounge. Then those 3 weren't the ones that killed Cyrus. Yes, 1 bullet is lodged in his chest. The problem is finding out in what order those shots were fired. Which one was the one that killed him? Missy furrowed her brow. Echo. Her voice was a hushed whisper. I sincerely hope this hasn't tarnished your view of me. Huh? It's very clear that this crime has my name written all over it. I was the one who revealed the gun to be in my possession. I was the one who left it out in the open. And I have no partner to support my whereabouts during the crime. And despite that, I cannot tell you my alibi. You can't? Huh? Why not? Missy, what would you have me think after you just said all that? Please, trust me. I don't know if I can. She sighed. I cannot argue with that. We'll just have to let the trial discussion command our judgment. I must try to produce a compelling enough argument. Missy. Oh, Echo. Say's hands were trembling. I'm so sorry about Ashley. It's scary, but I'm trying to pull through. It was a relief to see her still breathing, but I need to find out who would have such ill will toward her. That's very noble.
there's anything I can help you with, let me know.
Actually, yes there is.
What is it?
I was stuck in the art gallery when the crime was going on across the hall. I couldn't open the doors whatsoever. I heard some footsteps and voices after some time, so I banged on the main hall's doors.
That's right.
You were the first person I saw. Do you know why the doors were blocked?
Yeah. The double doors handles were bound together with rope. I'm guessing it was from the climbing center, so when I heard your voice from inside, I unbound the rope and you came running out.
Ah, so that's why she was holding the rope. She demonstrated how she found the rope by replicating the state on the smoke lounge doors. Rope. I went with Ashley to the climbing center as she got rope to bind Cyrus. Did the culprit steal it from her, and instead bind the doors to lock me in the art gallery? Or did she use it herself? That's strange. I was also wondering, where were you earlier this afternoon? I know Missy tried to call you out this morning, but you declined. Say's worried brow furrowed deeper.
Well, I just thought after the events of yesterday, if someone was going to kill me, it doesn't matter what I do.
What was she saying?
And what I wanted to do was stay in my room. The killer could break my door down or whatever, but if it was going to happen, fate would find a way, so be it.
Damn.
You know, after I heard the second gunshot ringing outside, I peeked out of curiosity. Who even had a gun in the first place? But it was pointless. Lyle had to drag me out and run me all over 3 floors just to find a bunch of nothing.
Say mumbled a train of thoughts to herself, but it didn't seem like she wanted an answer for her ponderings. I see. Well, thanks, Say. Say seemed to possess a haphazard reaction to the recent events. Regardless, Lyle confirmed that he and Say were together when they heard the gunshots, and neither of them were even aware someone had a gun in the first place. Okay. Takes care of all of them. What's a blowtorch doing here? It's a blowtorch. So that's what he was getting from the kitchen earlier. Oh, it came from the kitchen? What are you talking about? You recall I crossed paths with Cyrus early in the morning, a bit before I started testing the rules by destroying the ovens. It was a brief meeting, but I was curious as to why he was in there as well. He must have smuggled the butane torch out. And you didn't say anything? Why should I have? I mean, you could have stopped him far in advance from whatever he was going to do with it. He's dead and clearly didn't get the chance to do anything anyway. Okay, the broken glass here. Broken glass and torn fabric littered the floor around and underneath Cyrus's body. A struggle occurred here, that's for sure. It took place before Cyrus fell. The display case must have broke during the altercation, and he was killed sometime after, falling atop the refuse. That makes sense. Seems like the only way the room could have gotten so messy. Well, of course, no one's going to be cautious about their surroundings when their life is on the line. Luckily the blowtorch didn't ignite, otherwise we might have come across a fire-consumed scene with nothing but destroyed evidence. I guess it is lucky. Okay, and there's a... Yeah, the blowtorch, and there's a fuel canister here. An overturned gasoline container. It's almost empty.
Oh, it smells in here.
Yeah, the smoking lounge wasn't really a pleasant place to begin with, but this...
What do you mean?
Well, when Ash and I visited the smoking lounge for the first time, the air was heavy with cigar smoke, I'm assuming. So to see liquor and gasoline spilled all over the place and adding to the smell, it's not helping much, I'll say that.
I see. I didn't visit this place beforehand, so I can't really say, but I'll take your word for it. But gasoline seems out of place here, doesn't it?
Yeah. I wonder if it came from the garage. Yeah, that would be my guess, too. Okay, did we... Okay, I guess we examined everything here. Okay. Nothing except Ashley's body to examine here. Ash, hang in there. What? Ashley's hands were covered in blood. She didn't appear to have any sort of wounds, so the blood on her hands could have potentially come from only one place. Did Ashley try to prevent Cyrus's death? Or... if that were the case, whoever shot Cyrus could be the same person who took Ashley out, so she wouldn't reveal the assailant. The scene is quite unruly. I'm certain whether it'll be more or less difficult to determine the culprit in this scenario, considering the many questionable items lying about. Yeah, as opposed to what happened to Pandora, this is a bit jarring. Where were you, though? I remember seeing you go into the garage with Cannon earlier when we paired off to search the third floor. Yes, and that's precisely where we ended up. The two of us were investigating the garage as thoroughly as possible, but found nothing of note. We then went outside to investigate the other personal room doors at the end of the third floor living quarters hall. But as you may have figured out already, those personal room doors are locked. The conversation I heard, though, one of them... somebody broke out, though. Somebody was able to break in, though, to one of them, though, right? Shipakato. I heard him mutter something under his breath as he grazed the blue butterfly pin on his scarf, but I couldn't quite understand what was said. Oh, another... somebody related to him, perhaps. We already saw rooms related to Missy and Ashley. Where was I? Cannon and I then heard the first shot of 4. We rushed into the garage and barricaded the doors from the inside. You barricaded the doors? We thought it would be the best course of action to protect ourselves. Neither of us had the gun, so it had to be someone else. A reasonable conclusion, is it not? After that first shot and through to the 4th, we hid away in the garage until we heard a commotion in the 3rd floor halls. It was quite frightening hearing all 4 of those shots in such close vicinity. I never thought we'd come upon this gruesome scene. Forte sighed and mournfully looked at Ashley. So Forte and Cannon blocked the doors. That explains why the garage side double doors wouldn't open. So they barricaded those too. I approached Cannon as she overlooked the 2 scenes from the doorway opening between the rooms. You're probably wondering where I was this afternoon after we departed to search the 3rd floor. I was with Forte in the garage for a large portion of the afternoon, as well as during the duration of the 4 shots fired. He can vouch for my alibi. You and Ashley came upstairs after us, right? Yeah, we did. Didn't run into you 2 at all, though. We spent most of our time in the garage. It seemed to have the most potential for something useful out of the 4 rooms. Cannon silently surveyed the state of Ashley's body, then across the doorway at Cyrus's distant figure. Oh, here's the Monokuma file. I got it from the casino kiosk. Okay, finally. Alright. Victim, Cyrus Suryk. The victim's body was discovered on the 3rd floor of the Smokehouse Lounge. Victim was fatally shot above the heart. Estimated time of death is 12:03. No further injuries detected. It's a death. Like Pandora's file, this file is just as purposeless in telling us what happened to Cyrus. As for Ashley, I can't say. Do you think she might have been attacked, like hit over the head or something? I guess. It's not impossible, but she's pretty tall considering. It would be hard to say what she was attacked with, though. There's nothing on the casino side of the doors that could be used as a weapon. Our discussion fell flat. You seem a little more open today. Forte and I had a small parley in the garage. In short, he told me I shouldn't try to forego attempts to escape this game. She grumbled under her breath and exhaled sharply. Despite Cannon's frustration, she ended up providing more conversation today. Likely a result of wishing to avoid being caught in the same voiceless situation she was in during yesterday's trial. Okay, was that everything then? I let out a deep sigh. Conducting an investigation was harrowing. I was exhausted beyond belief. Our group was already so small, yet given everyone's paired alibis, it became difficult to say who was behind this crime. It was difficult to say, barring one person. What was Missy thinking? Had she been lying to us this whole time? No, I couldn't jump to conclusions so quickly. It wouldn't be fair to Missy. Regardless, I had a bad feeling about all this. Okie dokie! You all know what time it is! It's time for the class trial! I hope you have enough ammunition to shoot down the culprit. If not, then I guess you're all out of luck. The elevator will take you all to the courtroom once everyone is boarded, so make it snappy. The time of your bracelets to release toxic gas is set for 10 minutes after this announcement ends. Don't drag your feet. I rubbed my forehead in distress. This vicious cycle we couldn't see the end to continued once more. Why? I went over to Ashley's side and sat next to her. I gently placed 2 fingers at her wrist and felt the faint pulse. Such an eerie feeling knowing Ashley was still alive, but still so close to death. Forte laid his hand on my shoulder. Echo, we really ought to get going lest we find ourselves in danger from Zero's capricious ways. Yeah, you're right. Forte, would you mind? Not at all. Forte lifted Ashley from the knees with ease, carrying her to the elevator. I followed behind him, trying to keep a close distance to Ashley. Once again, our group apprehensively sauntered into the elevator. Our community had shrunk by 3, yet in the elevator cab we were divided further. Lyle and Say, Cannon and Forte, with Ashley in arms, myself and Missy. Distrust hacked away whatever threadbare remaining connection we had. But this time, damning signs pointed at one person in particular. Missy Vesper. Missy provided nothing to disprove those signs. Cyrus had been removed from the picture. Ashley was at the cusp of following. I was confused, hurt, and alone. What was I going to do during this trial? I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this too, though. The doors opened up and revealed the circular room once more. I rushed in and raised my voice, calling at the expanse nothingness in the room. Zero? Eve? We know there's an infirmary connected to the courtroom, so please help Ashley! With a flash, the symbol for the other announcer, Eve, appeared. Echo, there's a cross button for the infirmary in the elevator. The doors will open on the opposite side of the courtroom, leading you to the infirmary. I turned around and the courtroom side elevator door opened. I hopped in and pressed the cross button, opening the doors behind me. Forte swiftly carried Ashley in and gently laid her on the infirmary bed. He stepped aside as I clambered to the bedside. Ash, please be okay. It was impossible to tell if she was breathing. Every inhale and exhale was so small and weathered. The glass encasing lowered to cover Ashley, and the monitor above began displaying her vitals. Her heart rate had plummeted to 45 beats per minute. I will do my best to monitor her. Please, leave your worries at the door. There is a greater matter at hand awaiting you. Yes, Echo, we need to begin the class trial. Her health is out of our hands. We can only do so much. The best thing we can do now is find the culprit. Our discussion will reveal what occurred. Yeah. I steadily stepped back. Ashley, I'll figure out what happened to you. Swear on my life I'll find the culprit. Forte and I left the infirmary, crossing through the elevator that connected the infirmary into the trial grounds. Heavy clouds hung over the dome glass ceiling. Everyone was already in their places as Forte and I crept to ours. Another murder. It was unreal. Cyrus's mild and unassuming demeanor made a 180 when his talent of ultimate charisma was revealed to be a ruse. He quickly suffered the consequences, his sudden aggressive temperament coming to a full stop out of nowhere. Ashley's worrying condition. What could have possibly happened in the 2 rooms we found them in? However, despite the behavior Cyrus displayed, it was still shocking that someone would actually retaliate. Somehow it felt like a hasty overreaction. Then again, a hasty reaction was what essentially pushed Art to bring Pandora's demise. It was difficult to call Art the culprit after the lack of black and white intentions. But in the grand scheme of things, the rules of society were set to deliver retribution to those who commit crimes. Who's to say this place operated under the same conditions? The courtroom was eerily silent as we waited for Zero to appear. The atmosphere was justifiably tense. Lyle and Say shared a similar dark vibe. Cannon and Forte both looked unnerved. And Missy managed to put up a poker face despite the situation. Yeesh, it's about time you guys got here. And again, I have to say, it's so weird how quiet you bunch are. Is no one amped up for another class trial? Put a lot of work into these, you know. Of course we're not excited, you knave. Knave? Aye, Missy is so mean. It's a shame no one's excited, but this ball's gonna keep rolling whether you like it or not. Here we go. Let's go over the rules, shall we? You're all on trial to figure out who the culprit of today's heinous crime. The rules are as follows. Discuss, discover, and determine who the culprit is among your group. A majority vote will seal the individual's fate, and we'll just see what happens from there, yeah? One of the few outcomes will occur. Determine and vote incorrectly, and the entire class is executed, with the culprit alone able to walk free and win the ultimate prize. That's the ideal endgame for the culprit. Determine and vote correctly, and the culprit alone will receive proper retribution and perish at the hands of your group decision. Whew, you just might live to see another day. Our victim today is Cyrus Suryk, the ultimate charisma. More like ultimate nonsense. Was no one suspicious of his name and talent? I would be. Really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that charisma was not really his talent. Regardless, I called out his drivel last night, and look where we are now. You were all quick to take what I said to heart, huh? Well, I'm glad. Saves me from having to get a motive set up and all that. So without further ado, discuss away. Don't mind if I do. Lyle? Missy. You think you know what I'm gonna say, huh? Then say it for yourself. You think I'm suspect? Oh, gold star. The point is moot. I am not the culprit, and that's all I'll say on the matter. She insists she's not the culprit, but she is being very tight-lipped as to her whereabouts and whatnot before or while this was taking place. And why do you expect me to just roll with that? Because if you all vote incorrectly, then we'll all be in danger. Prove my innocence or take my word for it. Missy, what's going on with you? Don't you think that's a bit too much to ask given the circumstance? I have my convictions. I'm refusing to share my alibi for my own reasons. And yet you don't fear the consequences. You're ridiculous. I'll lay it all nice for you, okay? And then we can discuss whether or not holding your tongue is the wisest thing to do in this scenario. Consider the facts. You were not partnered with anyone, you refused to share an alibi, and you were the one who had the gun in the first place. Do you know what killed the victim this time? A gunshot. You likely proposed traveling in groups so you could operate on your own. Isn't this all too damning not to be true? Despite her dangerously challenging Lyle, I held my belief in Missy steadfast. I wanted in all sincerity to trust everyone involved in this horrible game, but considering 2 people have been murdered, 1 executed, and 1 attacked, it was becoming difficult to justify my stance. I didn't understand. What was there for Missy to hide? You know what? Forget it. I'm taking charge of this discussion. Once again, I can only rely on myself. Echo, you're a walking record of events. Tell me why I shouldn't think Missy was alone during the crime. Walking record? I'm not some encyclopedia of evidence. Or canon. If you have some sort of weird photo, fess up. Echo or canon, I don't care. One of you ought to pipe up with something we can work with. It can't be possible that neither of you two saw anything. Lyle has his sights set getting something out of me and Cannon, but as far as I know, neither of us could have seen anything. Yeah, I was barricaded in the art gallery. Cannon and Forte were barricaded in the garage. shut up, Lyle. I have no photograph of the sort.
But when we arrived on the 3rd floor, we didn't see anyone in the halls.
I was in the garage with Forte for the majority of the afternoon. Yes, as soon as we heard the first shot, I suggested we retreat to the garage and blocked entry from the 2 doors, the main hall door and the art gallery door. As for me, after 2 shots were fired, I found myself stuck in the art gallery. The 3rd floor activity rooms can't be locked. Cannon and Forte blocked the garage side doors.
And the main side doors were just inexplicably locked?
Of course not, Cannon. Cannon, Forte, and Echo are sharing the same story. This proves nothing. Okay, the only thing we can press on. Hold on. Say, can you recall what happened when we met earlier? Before we discovered Cyrus's body, that is.
When we met, you came tumbling out of the art gallery when Lyle and I arrived on the 3rd floor.
Yes, but I couldn't leave the room from the inside.
Oh, yeah. Lyle, when we arrived on the 3rd floor, there was a banging coming from the gallery. I couldn't check to see who or what was inside until I unwound the rope that bound the double doors together.
See, Lyle? There's no way either Cannon or I saw anything that happened during the crime. If anything, Say and Lyle's whereabouts ought to be grilled as well, since they could have more questionable actions than us. That's right. Say, Missy said you were alone in your personal room for a portion of the morning. Yes, she declined an invitation to my morning announcement.
Yeah. But later, after I heard 2 shots, I poked my head out. Only to get dragged out of my room by Lyle.
I was investigating the mansion. I figured if anything fishy was going on, I'd have a witness with me to back my testimony. And while nothing happened to us in particular, at least I had Say there to support my alibi during the gunshots. Despite that, you still were acting suspiciously this morning, smashing the ovens and all. Lyle, don't you think you yourself warrant an explanation for what you were doing? Huh? I don't need to justify anything I'm doing. I'm the ultimate puzzle master, put in this evil game to solve it inside out. If you have any faith in your ultimate talents, you'll have faith in mine and my goals as well. I don't care if I break the rules, it's all part of the plan. I'll avenge Art, I'll stop the killings, and I'm solving this killing game on my own, come hell or high water. But didn't it occur to you that I'm on the same agenda? What? There aren't any stakes for you, Missy. Art was the only person I've encountered that made my talent worthwhile. I can only trust myself. I'll work alone until I can grasp the situation with my own hands. Only then will it be real. Everyone involved, you're all just pieces of this puzzle.
What is this guy even saying? You're an oddball, Lyle. But thanks for reminding me.
Reminding you of what?
I don't have much power outside the courtroom, believe it or not. Eve mostly controls and monitors all that outside boring stuff, but I knew you'd all eventually end up back here soon enough, so I just had to wait.
Wait, what?
Ah!
Oh. With a snap, the trial walls slammed open to reveal a large metal hexagon, adorned with a cruel-looking M. Lyle crumpled to the floor as we all backed away, astonished at whatever invisible pain was being inflicted on him. Now's where he intends to punish him for breaking the rules.
It's a sonic weapon. High-powered sound waves from me, personally, to Lyle. This is what you get for fiddling with my door trap. Ah! I think Lyle's brain's been fried enough. There's no fun or suspense to be had in killing you myself unless I'm executing a culprit. Don't mess with my stuff! Ugh. Somehow Lyle remains standing. Ugh. Please, we must move the discussion along. Unless we face a similar dangerous fate, we need— Shut it, Missy! We're here because of you! Lyle was vivid, fighting back against collapsing by will of sheer force. I'm taking control of the discussion this time. Echo, I need you to recall as much information as you can about the murder weapon, the gun. What? Who do you think you are demanding such things? I'm Lyle Termina, the ultimate puzzle master. Need I say again? I'll solve this case like I've solved all the puzzles that have come my way. Your memories are a tool for solving this, and I'll be damned if I don't use something as instrumental as that. Get to it, Echo. I don't have all day. Alright, I'll try to relay what I remember to you all. Lyle might have it out for Missy, but going over the timeline could help us put her in the clear. I think it would be best to start from when the murder weapon was revealed. Maybe then we can trace who had it in the final moments. Who was originally in possession? Missy. Missy Vesper was the one who initially revealed the gun this morning. She said she woke up in her personal room with the gun given to her as a test to see whether or not she belonged with the preservation project. Missy called me and some of the other students to discuss her possessing the gun. Who were the other students in the group? It was... let's see. Forte, Ashley, Missy, and Cannon. Missy assembled a small group for a meeting. There she brought the existence of the weapon to our attention and discussed her intentions with the gun. She would not cause any harm with it. The group consisted of Forte, Ashley, Missy, and Cannon as well. Everyone at that meeting agreed to place an implicit trust in our peers. Missy left the gun in the foyer. After the meeting, Missy left the gun on the main foyer table, wrapped in the cloth she had been carrying it in. After discussing the existence of such a weapon, something happened. That was Lyle destroying the kitchen. We discussed the existence of the gun, among other things, until we were interrupted by a loud sound coming from the kitchen. Our whole group went over at once to see what was going on, and there we found Lyle destroying the kitchen oven as a means to test the rules. Lyle announced that he would solve the killing game and went to the jazz club. No, wait. I thought, no, that was where Missy dragged Cyrus off to. No, he was looking specifically for the other students and where they resided. Lyle said he would solve the killing game and ascended to the 3rd floor to look for more clues, all the while clutching the secret note from yesterday. He left the kitchen and took the elevator up as the rest of us remained in the foyer, confused. Shortly after, Cyrus appeared at the top of the 2nd floor stairs, causing someone to act. Missy. Shortly after Lyle departed for the 3rd floor, Cyrus made an appearance at the top of the 2nd floor stairs. Missy went up to confront Cyrus by having a conversation with him in the jazz club. The rest of us went to investigate the 3rd floor for an escape route. I believe it's worth mentioning that Cannon and Forte went up first, with me and Ashley following afterward. None of us took the gun. From the looks of it, Missy and Cyrus's conversation in the jazz club is a gray area that none of us were privy to. Care to explain yourself, and why we shouldn't be suspicious of a private altercation moments before his murder? I was attempting to extract information from him.
As you all know, he was acting intensely suspicious yesterday. However, rather than avoid him, I thought to take action and confront him head first. You mentioned this before, but can you explain why you think he's putting on a facade? I mean, for all we know, every word out of his mouth could be a lie. Body language. Huh? Body language? Ah, it seems Cannon's noticed as well. Cyrus's body language gives off the impression that he's tense, as if he were being pressured or under stress. Actions speak louder than words, after all. That's true. I think he looked a little more foreboding than usual. Ultimately, did you get anything from him? Unfortunately not. He was just the same stubbornly cryptic person as he was last night. So that's it? In Echo's recollection of people involved with the murder weapon, whose name came up several times?
Missy.
So don't you think your course of actions would heavily imply a murderous intent that led to this circumstance? Yes, signs are strenuously pointed toward me being the one behind it all, but I don't wish to divulge the reasons behind those actions. Still, I didn't want to admit it, but I was beginning to have my doubts about Missy. But if this discussion was worth anything, it had to be a test. Whether or not I could really trust Missy. She revealed the gun, after all, and asked us to tacitly trust her. Should I even trust her to begin with? What if she was just goading someone on to be incriminated, so she could get away with it? Should I trust Missy? I'm gonna lean toward yes. I want to believe in her. That meant scrutinizing her actions to free her from suspicion. We couldn't afford to jump to conclusions. If I may, I think we need to turn over as many questionable facts as we can to lift suspicion. I agree. The evidence is unmistakably painted with Missy's name, but I'm still not convinced that she would have the malicious intent to kill Cyrus. Missy was the one who suggested splitting up to find things that could threaten Cyrus into talking, but she made it clear that she never had any intention of firing the gun. Is that so? It was after she had her conversation with Cyrus in the morning. Our morning group of Cannon, Forte, Ashley, and myself paired off to investigate the third floor for an escape route. After some time, Missy met up with me and Ashley outside the garage to talk about Cyrus's weird behavior. It was then that she discussed with Ashley the idea of threatening Cyrus to talk. This was just before the shots began. Then it's clear that she used the opportunity to act alone and retrieve the gun herself to shoot Cyrus. How would bringing that up lift suspicion from Missy? If anything, it's more damning proof. Oh. Just a minute, please. What I don't understand is this. Why would Missy kill Cyrus if she didn't get the information she wanted? I can only assume the following for her case. She made an attempt to have a civil conversation with Cyrus, only to walk away empty-handed. The motivation is lost, and there shouldn't be any reason to threaten him further in that case. Oh, sure, make something up in her defense, will you? I can't doubt Missy now. She's the one who made the bold move of bringing the gun to our attention. Now I have to trust that she didn't do anything wrong. Because Because that's my thing. Why would she have revealed the gun to have been in her possession in the first place? If she intended to kill with it, it would have been more to her benefit to keep it hidden. There's no telling what transpired between Missy and Cyrus, seeing as all of us witnessed her contentious interaction with him in the jazz club. It might take some work to get Lyle on the other side. Missy could be lying about not getting information, just like how she's withholding her alibi. Give it up. Why should we be protecting the culprit? Missy is the only one with actions of glaring noteworthy suspicion. If you can disprove it, then by all means. This could be part of her plan, to lead us in circles during the discussion with her lofty admissions. Hang on, we need to discuss every aspect of this case before jumping to conclusions. I believe there's something at the crime scene that can clear Missy of suspicion. Then out with it! Is there any evidence that can prove Missy's innocence? I think I know where we're going with this. Only thing I can think of, but I need to spin this into an argument somehow. Although it's been noted several times that the gun puts Missy in a dangerous situation. There's something strange about the gun. Right, the blood stain on the handle. Lyle, say, there's something I want you to recall for me. Before discovering the body, you two ran into Missy in the third floor main hall, correct? Yeah, that was right before I helped you out of the art gallery. If that's the case, I want to ask, did you see blood on her hands? Blood on her hands? Nothing of the sort. So you didn't see blood stuck to her hands, but there was blood stuck to the handle of the gun. If Missy really did kill Cyrus by shooting him, why didn't she have blood stuck to her hands when you saw her? But you know who else we saw that did have blood on their hands? That's what's giving me the bad feeling. Simple answer, Missy could have washed her hands. When Say and I approached the third floor, I saw Missy exit one of the personal rooms. Oh, so she was the one. She refuses to share her alibi because she must have been plotting the crime with an accomplice on the third floor. That's why she was acting fishy when Lyle and I ran into her. Huh? I thought I heard something like that outside the garage doors. Oh yeah, that conversation. I heard parts of a conversation just before I called for help. Now that I think about it, I think I can figure out who was speaking at the time. Lyle, you must be a raving madman if you think you can run around the building alone. Wait, alone? I thought Say was supposed to be with him. I'm not doing anything suspicious. I'm doing everything I can to get us out of here, unlike the rest of you. And what were you doing poking around one of the third floor personal rooms anyway? How do you even get in there? That is none of your business. So you heard that? Yes. Sayane caught Missy in the act. She was poking around in one of the third-floor personal rooms. But, based on that first part of the conversation, it sounded like Lyle was alone. So where was Say? And how do you suppose she entered the room? She entered the room using the resident's bracelet. How else would she have gotten in? The door was still intact, so it's not like Missy broke it down. The resident's room bracelet. How could she have acquired such a thing? I can only assume whatever Missy and Cyrus talked about earlier might have had to do with the fact that she acquired something that couldn't possibly belong to her. In fact, the idea alone of her entering someone else's room is cause for concern. That's true. How did she enter someone else's room? The mechanism for room entry lies in our personally assigned bracelets. Similar to how the bracelets grant access to kiosk functions, the doors must default to being locked and only unlock when we're nearby with a corresponding bracelet. There, the bracelets on our person can unlock doors that don't match, so Missy entering a room that's not hers implies she gained access through alternative means. What alternative means? What else? She was witness speaking to the only other student here that has been revealed to be associated with the killing game, Cyrus. Fine, I'll yield. Cyrus offered me the bracelet of a student I was closely acquainted with. Out of morbid curiosity, I was told to visit her room. Ah, yes. Missy withdrew a small rose gold bracelet, similar to the ones we all wore ourselves. So yes, not only do I have the bracelet on my person, but I do have a bracelet that does not belong to me. As for what I discovered in the room, well, that's as much as I'd like to say. She's still holding out on us. And that's more than enough? There we have it. That explains how she gained entry into the room, as well as lists a reason for her to retaliate against Cyrus. If that doesn't pin Missy down for a motive, I don't know what will. She had such a thing this whole time. How was I supposed to defend something like that? So much evidence is stacked against Missy. Despite the overwhelming number of incriminating facts against her, Missy remained unflinching. It's like she's just waiting. Waiting for what? For us to act on her behalf? Out of trust. Remember. I ought to use the gun to threaten him into talking. Make no mistake, I have absolutely no intention of firing it, but Cyrus doesn't need to know that. If Missy's being withholding about her alibi, there must be a reason behind it. I'll have to try to work with it rather than against it. I'll have to trust Missy's intentions. Therefore, I should try to construct an argument that doesn't involve her. Is there another angle I can approach this by? Before we learned of her activity in the room, we were in the middle of disputing the blood-stained gun. Lila's been aggressively utilizing the connection between Missy and the gun for his argument. But let's say we take her out of the picture. Say she never came in contact with the gun. Perhaps we can tackle the argument from a different side. With just the gun solely in question, we can ask, who really handled the gun?
Who handled the gun?
Fine. Why don't we entertain the thought?
Given the blood-stained handle of the gun, whoever held the gun must have stained their hands in the process.
There can be only two people who handled it. Cyrus and Ashley. Yeah, that's what... So now that is coming up now. So there we have it. Echo, do you think Ashley is capable of killing?
What?
No way! Ash would never! After all, I'm certain she knows the dangers of killing someone. Her own life would be on the line. So what? This is the only explanation possible, if we take your position of Missy's innocence into consideration. Ooh. Okay, let's leave it off here for a second. I'll be back in a few minutes. Alright, and we're back. So, now's where suspicion starts to fall on Ashley, which, that was what I was worried about before, because other than Cyrus, the victim, the only other one we saw with blood on their hands was Ashley. I wondered if maybe if she shot him and he might have hit her with something with the last of his strength, and maybe she stumbled into the other room and then collapsed. Only problem with that is that I think they said there were no visible wounds on her. There's still some unknowns, so let's continue to see where this goes. If Ashley's life were threatened, don't you think she would retaliate? Anyone would fight back. Fight or flight, Echo. There were clear signs of struggle in the smoking lounge, after all. That can't be. Besides, you confirmed it yourself. We recognize that everyone has an alibi. And we've been neglecting talking about Ashley since she's unconscious. Wait, no. So if you really want to stand by Missy being trustworthy, then you have to realize there must be someone else within our group that killed him. No, Ash. Ash doesn't have a motive either. Something to do with Silva, maybe. Yes, she does. Echo, think about it. Throw away your relation to Ashley and think logically. Just because she isn't here to defend herself doesn't mean she's immune to being suspected. No. No. My head was pounding. I began to feel dizzy. If Ashley had the rope when we were together on the second floor, and there was no rope to be found at the crime scene, she must have bound the double doors of the gallery. Say confirmed that the rope kept me locked in the gallery. Ashley yelled out and left to confront something. If you think about whoever handled the gun, it can only be those two people. No. No! I don't want to think about it. Please. Stop this! They don't want to discuss Ashley's involvement due to their close relation, but there might be something important that we're missing. Something important that Echo only knows. Echo is guarding something. They paint themselves into a corner. There's no clean way to get out of this mess. Yikes! Echo, you good over there? I can't accept this. If Echo refuses to understand that Ashley is the only person who's capable of handling the gun and shooting Cyrus, then I'll have to lay out all the pieces for them. Puzzle pieces as always. Echo, allow me to discuss the facts. All of them. Even the unsavory, trifling matters will come into play, just like when you were the one who noticed Art slipped up. If you insist on protecting Missy, there's one person whose actions remain to be scrutinized. And Ashley is the culprit in question. Do I have any objections? I apologize, Echo, but this topic cannot be ignored. Yeah, this is pretty important. The rest of the class remained silent as Echo glared a hole in me. Wait, is this... Are we doing this from Lyle's point of view now? That's what it's sounding like. Again, let us begin with the weapon. The mysterious gun that came from Missy's possession. Seeing as the gun handle was stained with blood, we can only surmise only 2 people were in contact with it. As we found on the crime scene, both Cyrus and Ashley had bloodstains all over their hands, which naturally leads us to believe one of them fired the gun. I can concur with that assumption. As for how it came to appear on the 3rd floor, just before the gunfire occurred, Ashley and I hatched a plan to confront Cyrus. I was to use the gun as a show of threat. However, when I went to retrieve it from the foyer, it was missing before I had gotten to it. It's plausible Cyrus got to it before you. Regretfully so. Then, at the speculated time in question, Cyrus is the only possible suspect to have initially retrieved the gun, since Echo, Ashley, Cannon, and Forte were elsewhere. Now, I believe we can all agree, based on the sounds heard, there were 4 shots fired in total. In that case, we need to determine the order and relevance of each shot. Cannon and I boarded ourselves in the garage on the 3rd floor after the first shot rang out from the smoke lounge. We sheltered ourselves inside from there on out.
And Lyle and I partnered up after the second, but we were all the way on the 1st floor.
So we can determine those first 2 shots were not the life-threatening ones, since no one was in the vicinity of the smoking lounge and there were 2 gunshots in the wall. However, between the 2nd and 3rd shot is where Ashley's alibi becomes problematic. You're wrong. There's nothing wrong with Ashley's alibi. I can verify it for her. I was with Ashley from when she went to the 2nd floor to the climbing center, as well as when she went to the 3rd floor. I never let her out of my sight the entire time we were traveling down and up the stairs. Damn, Echo's thoughts and judgment are being clouded by their relation to Ashley. I have to focus somewhere in Echo's statement and lay the facts straight so they understand. Okay, this is a neat turn of events, though. There's Ashley from when she went to the 2nd floor. She went to the 2nd floor to the climbing tower, as well as when she went to the 3rd floor. Proves Echo and Ashley were separated. But didn't you say Ashley shoved you in the art gallery just before you heard the 3rd shot? The rope binding the doors proved there was a moment that you 2 were separated from sight. It's possible that she entered the smoking lounge in that time frame. In that case, the 4th and final shot ought to be the one that killed Cyrus. The only person left without an alibi, given Echo's testimony of the culprit's last movements. The only person left is Ashley. That can't be it. Echo's not done yet. No, Ash yelled Missy's name. It's possible Missy was within the vicinity of the smoking lounge. After all, Missy's actions on the 3rd floor are still strange. We can't ignore that.
Echo is struggling, trying to protect Ashley. What do we do?
If there's anything you can think of that'll cut through Echo's lies, Tell them that the truth is out there. Missy was not within the vicinity of the smoke lounge.
Wait just a minute. That's not possible. Remember, Lila and I saw Missy exiting a personal room.
She had just come out of the personal room when we arrived, and only then began to act suspiciously. I suppose I ought to surrender holding my tongue. Yes, I was withholding my alibi earlier, but the point of secrecy is past, now that my whereabouts have come into direct question. I kept my alibi secret to prevent beginning today's deliberation with immediate worry and disillusionment. I confessed Cyrus bestowed upon me a terrible gift, this bracelet. It allowed me access to a room that was not mine, a room belonging to a close personal acquaintance, one I hold in my thoughts often. I entered the room upon Cyrus's taunting instruction that I see for myself what's become of this person. I discovered nothing, save for my fears becoming reality. My alibi is simply as follows. I did not leave the third floor personal room I gained entry to until after I heard the second gunshot. Therefore, I did not see Ashley on the third floor at all. Took long enough to get that testimony out of you. But in that case, Ashley really is the only possible person to have encountered Cyrus in the smoking lounge. Therefore, we can assume from the appearance of the room that Ashley and Cyrus fought in the duration of time between the third and fourth shot. The smoking lounge was in a state of disarray, but the casino wasn't. Ashley's body was found in the casino, so it's possible she never even set foot in the smoking lounge. No, there's no visible evidence of the two fighting. Echo knows very well there were clear signs of strife. The broken glass. A new tactic is in order. Echo, your judgment is clouded, and I think you know that. There was glass and blood littered near Ashley's unconscious body in the casino that could only have come from one place. The casino itself was spotless, free of signs of struggle. The detritus leading from the smoking lounge to the casino, however, tells a different story. With those facts in mind, let's review. We've discovered everyone's paired alibis. Missy's room activity and Echo's entrapment in the art gallery in relation to the gunshot timeline frees them from suspicion. We also determined Cyrus was the one who was initially wielding the gun, and that Ashley had plans to counter Cyrus's scheme. In the small period during which Ashley and Echo were separated, a struggle occurred between Ashley and Cyrus in the smoking lounge just across the hall, resulting in the disorderly state of the room. And yet at the end of it, one person came out alive and the other dead. Echo, you have to see that the culprit behind this is plain as day. What? No. Ah! Face the facts. There's only one possible answer. I refuse! I don't even recall Ash considering Cyrus a threat, so what motive would she have to kill him anyway? Echo, why are you lying? That couldn't be further from the truth. There must be someone, anyone else involved. Anyone but her. Jeez. Echo, you really are a stubborn one. Don't you understand the danger we're in? Please, Echo. I understand this is a painful realization for you. We are just as mortified that such a dreadful thing has happened.
It's awful, but there has to be a reason, right?
No. If there's a reason, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Why would Ash endanger herself like this? Throwing her life away like this? It seems so careless. Based on Ashley's suggested actions, it's hard to believe she was negligent about facing the danger. But there's something else that needs to be brought to Echo's attention. The kiosk. It was destroyed at one point. Allow me to widen your depth of field. I believe I have the answer. Or rather, we all do. It seems Echo didn't see the kiosk message. Kiosk message? Remember, the digital kiosks can deliver dictated messages across other kiosks in the building. That's correct. Cannon and I saw the message as we waited out the gunfire in the garage. This message was dictated from the smoking lounge sometime after the third shot was fired. I recall it read, "Kill Echo." Yep, that's exactly no one asked you.
Oh! I remember now. Lyle and I saw the second floor kiosk light up while we were running by.
Come on! You heard the gunfire too, right? So far there have been 3 shots, but where the hell did a gun come from?
How should I know? Hey, slow down, I can't keep up.
We can't take our sweet time in a moment like this.
Kyle, look.
Or Lyle. Kyle.
The kiosk, it's displaying a message.
You see. The smoking lounge, that's on the 3rd floor. I never saw such a thing, but it's awfully damning in what it was implying. I concur, it's quite a pointed message. In that case, we can assume that... Did Ash kill Cyrus to protect Echo? If that's the case...
That Echo might have actually been Cyrus's intended target.
Echo, Ashley didn't endanger herself out of carelessness, but for your sake. She threw her life into the fray to keep yours safe. Then there should be little doubt that the 4th shot must have been the one to kill Cyrus. But what about the other 3 shots? What was the significance of those? The shot fired after Ashley left Echo's side. I don't understand. Why for me? I'm not like the rest of you. I'm no ultimate student. I can't survive the strife between ultimates. I don't have skills or talents to offer the world. Wasn't that the motive question, though? Does that pertain to this in some way? It should have been me. At the opposite end of the gun. Pardon me. The voice of Eve interrupted the looming courtroom silence. I have an update on Ashley's health. She is steadily recovering at the moment. She's okay. However, I have detected traces of Complex 53 in her system. That's the poison from the bracelets, right? Complex 53? Is that not the very substance Zero threatened time and time again to release? Yes, I examined the bracelet in her possession, and it appears the glass vial has been shattered, allowing the liquid state to enter her system via absorption through skin. Shattered. It's possible that it broke from some kind of impact from Cyrus and Ashley's fight. Is that what she collapsed from? Just a minute. The bracelet in her possession. Is it not her own bracelet? It is not. She had in her possession the bracelet of Silva Prower. Ashley's bracelet is still intact. Oh. So Cyrus must have given Ashley Silva's bracelet. If she had Silva's bracelet, then there's no doubt she had a clear motive. It's possible she was goaded on by Cyrus with the bracelet of an important figure, just as Missy was. No way! Cyrus probably just broke the vial himself and administered the liquid to Ash during their fight. Or Zero could have unleashed it to harm her. Zero's killing game announcement always talks about toxic gases, so it's possible he's the one behind it. Damn it, Echo! I'm tired of this. You still refuse to accept the reality of this case. Zero can't have done it, and I'll tell you why it's simply not even up for debate. I was testing the rules early this morning, right? Rule 4 states that breaking major assets is strictly prohibited, but nothing happened all day. It was only until the beginning of this very trial I suffered the effects of Zero's sonic weapon, as punishment for breaking the rules. If he waited until we entered the trial grounds to punish me, why would he unleash the Complex 53 toxin if there weren't any signs of Ashley breaking the rules? Zero, did you or did you not release Complex 53 into Ashley? What? I'm only the arbiter of this game. Answer! Nope, I didn't do it. No, this can't be. You still don't get it. We've been running around in circles in this trial because you vehemently refuse to face the truth. Don't you have any value in your life? Your lapse in judgment is what will get us all killed. Lyle, have some sympathy, won't you? But I have to agree with you. Echo, please. The trial is difficult enough to participate in, but it's necessary to determine the culprit for our safety. Allow yourself to be selfish and act on self-preservation instead of on the well-being of others. Don't concern yourself with protecting me. Don't concern yourself with speaking for Ashley. You'll only end up hurting yourself if we judge this case incorrectly. Just follow the truth and you can protect yourself. I know we're asking a lot since the truth isn't what you want to hear, but please. Is that protect myself. Damn. is this what happened, then? What did that mean? I thought I had to protect Missy on behalf of Trust. She placed her faith in us, after all. And I had to protect Ashley because she's my closest friend, but... myself... I felt stuck. I know Missy didn't kill Cyrus, I just know it. And it was impossible for anyone else to have killed him, so... the answer was clear as day. I just didn't want to accept it. But by doing so, I was drawing out this trial for my own self-indulgence, and dragging everyone else through this hell. I've forgotten the reason we're here, to save ourselves. And I purposefully suppressed the fact that there was something on the crime scene that solidified Ashley's involvement. I saw the damning thing, and I chose to forget it. Yes, the weapon was undebatable. The culprit had a motive. The struggle showed traces of her involvement. Oh, wow. Not even giving me a choice on this. Ashley. I'm gonna take this lull in conversation to assume you're all done discussing the case, yeah? After all, it was pretty obvious from the start. Well, whatever. This is your space anyway, so without further ado, it's voting time! That was what I was afraid of. Ding, ding, ding! Yes, the culprit responsible for the murder of Cyrus Syriac is none other than the ultimate jockey, Ashley Westbridge. And almost all of you voted correctly. Almost. Echo, still. Luckily, majority rules, so it's punishment time! Wait, what did you mean by that? Almost all of us voted correctly. I guess it's my fault for not mentioning that not voting is a big no-no. But voting should be common sense. You have a responsibility to make your voice heard. Lives are on the line. Or something like that. Missy would know. Don't rope me into this asinine argument. Think of it this way. You're voting for the lesser of two evils. Punish one person for committing a crime, or punish everyone else for being ignorant. But I can see in Echo's face that they figured it out, so I suppose I'll call it a vote. Aren't I just the nicest, most flexible judge ever? Echo, you didn't vote? How could I? Unbelievable! Everyone's lives are at stake, and you still had the audacity to protect the culprit? You're a hopeless case, Echo. I don't understand how you fail to recognize the weight of our actions. The truth was glaringly obvious, yet you continue to turn away. You have no perception of consequence. How dare you refuse to give your all in order to save yourself? Why are you attacking me? This thing that just happened to my best friend, it's awful. Don't you know how I feel too, Lyle? We've already lost 3 friends. Why does this cycle keep turning? Of course I know how you feel, but it's pointless to let things spin out like this. That's why I'm trying my best to solve this killing game. I don't need you turning your cheek away from reality. That'll only make things worse. Damn it. I looked over at Ashley, who recovered enough strength to join us in the courtroom at the last moments of our discussion. Ash, I don't get it. To protect me, you threw yourself into danger? And look where it got you, at the foot of an execution. Ash, you're such an idiot. How could you do something so careless? Echo, I thought about nothing but your safety. Huh? All I ever wanted is the safety and health of my friends. But look what rotten trouble I got everyone into. First Silva, and now Echo. Maybe it's better like this. Echo, you don't have to worry about me anymore. Thank goodness, right? If I was in that trial, you wouldn't have budged, and you might have voted Missy off instead. At least you know you can trust her. What are you saying? I thought that if I could remove a threat from this horrible game, my actions would have been all worth it. But it turns out Cyrus was just asking for this. Cyrus used Silva's bracelet as a show of threat. That the reason he had it and Silva didn't was because Cyrus said that he had eliminated them. Isn't that right? He said the same to me when I received my additional bracelet. Cyrus, ultimate confidential informant, knew things we would soon rather forget, and he used that information to get under our skin. I told you, he's someone to be wary of. So Ashley had essentially lost us the Preservation Project's mole? What if he had information that could have gotten us out? Oh, he had information all right, but he would never tell. Zero's right. When I confronted him to inquire about his facade, he kept dodging my questions. He was acting so odd. And as it appears, his strange behavior went all according to plan. He was acting suspicious to invite someone into attacking him. And I completely fell for it. But I felt terrible after because when he collapsed, his aggressive facade faded and he laughed. He was glad. Yes, Cyrus fully intended to take someone down with him. Huh. Cyrus fired those initial 2 shots to draw attention. I arrived on the 3rd floor with Echo. I ushered Echo into the art gallery and bound the doors with rope from the climbing center. I confronted Cyrus in the smoking lounge, and he fired right away. The 3rd shot was a near miss. Cyrus! Not a step closer, Ashley. Unless you'd like to end up like your friend, Silva. What do you know about Silva? Oh, I know everything there is to know. Financial records, personal records, etc. After all, I am the ultimate confidential informant. My job to seek information about the Preservation Project subjects. I personally saw to his removal. And you're next. Not if I have anything to say about it. Yeah, I'd act fast if I were you. You wouldn't want to go down in flames without getting the information you want, would you? How did his racing helmet end up in your room? Why, by yours truly, of course. And his personal vehicle is a '94 Lister Storm, the very vehicle that is in the garage right now. Cyrus threatened me with an awful trinket and a time limit. He prepared spilled gasoline and had a blowtorch ready to burn the room down if I didn't act. I fought to keep him at bay. He eventually dropped the gun. I retrieved the gun and gripped the handle fiercely, but Cyrus remained completely cool. He noticed my hesitance and silently tossed a tiny rose gold bracelet in my direction. I snatched it out of the air, turned it over in my hands to reveal the name engraved on it, Silva Prowler. What'll it be, Ashley? Oh, quiet! This isn't right. Why put us through this awful game? For the sake of the future? I'm not an ultimate student. Let's play a game. There's 2 more bullets somewhere in that chamber. If you fire and I live, I'll let you walk away scot-free. Your hands will be clean, and you were meant to be an ultimate student, born to benefit the world. If you fire and I die, then... Of course, you know what happens. But in his last moments, he just lets out a chuckle and sigh of relief. He looked relaxed. He looked as calm as when we first met him. I was confused. Why wasn't he fighting back at all? You're a tough nut to crack, you know. What are you doing? I'm trying to save you. I know I took a chance with that shot, but there has to be another answer. The Preservation Project is a miserable organization that I contributed to. I rallied this group of ultimate students, compiled all the information I could about you all for the project. This project and their game. It's a cruel experiment, all for the sake of the future. Why are you telling me this? So you won't feel guilty about killing me. But how could I not feel guilty? There could have been some other way to get you out of this mess. Cyrus, I don't understand. Why did it have to come to this? Because I thought I had immunity from the game. But when Zero called me out for my cover talent, I knew something was wrong. Why would Zero, an arbiter for the killing game conducted by the Preservation Project, wish to reveal my place in the game? Something was wrong. It's all wrong. This whole game is all wrong. I couldn't wrap my head around a thing he was saying. I didn't dare wish to know what he was talking about, but... What's wrong? He coughed out a small chuckle. I made you do a horrible thing. The problem with this game is that you become attached to the ones you're with. As time goes on, bonds are made with the strangers you eventually come to call your friends. I should have never involved myself with you all. I couldn't meet his eyes. I knew it would be too painful. And you might hate me for this, but it's for the best. For you and for me. Winning the game is nothing but smoke and mirrors. I'm sorry, but thank you for helping me escape this game. He held my hands in his own trembling grasp, weakly pushing my attempts at stopping his suffering away. After I shot him, I knew immediately what terrible fate I found myself in. I was tethered to meet the same end the moment I fell into his trap. I fled the scene, leaving in a mess, because I knew it would be pointless to conceal the truth. But even then, I knew the trial discussion would trace back to my incrimination. That's why I went so far as to shatter the vial of Complex 53 and Silva's bracelet to take myself out of the picture. Ash! Why would you do such things to yourself? It's awful! I know. Please don't hate me. And forgive me for making such a selfish request, but all I ask is that you live and survive. I did it all for you. Aw, that's sweet. Well, too bad for you. That sickly sweet sentimentalism isn't going to save you from your execution, silly. Murder is murder. What's the thing you say? Oh, there's no gray area about it. Wait! There's no stopping this freight train of despair, Echo. You were among the ones who sealed her fate, after all. So sit back and enjoy the show. No! Ashley's hand slipped through mine. She disappeared into the black as I collapsed over myself. All I could do to pull myself up was keep my focus squarely on Ashley as her horrified visage was projected for us to grimace upon. I tried to soak up my final moments with her, even though I knew that they were going to be gruesome. Ashley was chained to a metal post. An industrial whirring spun in my skull as a set of arms began to wind up. Clenched at the end of each arm was a horseshoe. Ashley was bound in the direct path across the mass of grinding machinery, 40 feet away. Oh, I think I see where... This is going to be... Ashley's expression was taut. There was only one way out of this game for her, and it was winding up in front of her just a few paces away. The first pitch was thrown. The light clink as the arm released the horseshoe made my heart drop. It missed with a full thud on the dirt beside Ashley. A second, third, fourth, sixth pitches were thrown with wild abandon, as if purposefully missing to prolong my own suffering. The anticipation was miserable. Ashley's gray, sorrowful eyes seemed to meet mine from within the projected screen. I couldn't look any longer. I felt sick. I was gonna say, playing horseshoes with her similar to the, again, the thing with Leon's execution with the baseballs. That was what I was thinking at first. I turned away in agony and heard the distinct sound of a pitch breaking bone. I could feel the life drain from my body. There was nothing but pain during her last moments. The pain that destroyed her body. And the pain that stung in her heart. Oh, it's so satisfying building up all this hope and cheer to eventually strike it down with a decisive kill. It is a little boring, though, you participants killing for defensive reasons. We didn't even give a motive, which was a bit of a curveball, but interesting that a murder occurred nonetheless. Well, I mean, I suppose I did put Cyrus on blast for conniving with the Preservation Project group. He got in the way of the game after all, so I guess it was beneficial for me in the end. The whole trial made my head spin. I felt wretched. I stared at the floor. Not a breath was heard from the others. They seemed just as stunned into silence. And in the depths of our devastation, Eve's silvery voice crept in. I beseech you all to keep the memory of your friends close. It's awful. I don't want to remember this. Remain strong. As I nursed Ashley back to health, she kept asking aloud, is Echo okay? Is Echo okay? She cared for you until her last breath. Don't think for a second she didn't put everything on the line for you. But why me? I apologize. I cannot say for certain what she was thinking, except Ashley, without a doubt, cared for you deeply. As difficult as it is, cling to what remains of Ashley, her memory.
Really? That's all you have this time, Eve? Some empty sentimentalism? You know, Eve claims to be on your side, but look what she's done. Why not just leave Ashley to die of the Complex 53 poisoning, Eve? Oh, I know why. Because you love reveling in the despair, too. She nursed Ashley back to health so I could kill her.
Ashley returned to us, only to be cruelly beaten to death. That moment, that shred of relief, so quickly quashed, and it was so quickly mutilated into twisted, dark feelings.
How pathetic. You'll never end the game like this. You'll fail once more. Despair will triumph over hope yet again, Eve. And it's all your fault.
Zero and Eve warped away, and the courtroom was engulfed in silent darkness once again. Echo. Missy's voice was a whisper. She laid a gentle hand on my shoulder. Hey, let's get you out of here. I listlessly followed Missy out of the courtroom. Everyone else filtered out of the courtroom at their own pace as well, dissolving into their own individual lost thoughts for the evening. Without a single word, Missy led me down the living quarters hall to my personal room. Before I entered, Cannon stopped me out of nowhere. I realized that must have been hard for you, Echo. But, here, just take this. Cannon handed me a photograph. Aww. It was a photo of the students gathered in the atrium. Everyone was in the photo except me and Cannon. I took this photo on the first day. It was after the first Killing Game announcement. After the Killing Game announcement. I recalled the moment in time. I went to my personal room after declining Ashley's invitation to use the spa lounge of Pandora. Art insisted that I work my magic and take a photo of the group, since we'd be staying together as friends in this mansion. Despite that awful announcement, he still wanted to take a neat, pleasant picture. I'm a little embarrassed of it. I don't often photograph groups, but I hope this helps ease your pain. Why would you show me this? What do you mean? I don't want to see this. This idyllic scene of our friends who aren't with us anymore. The killings are too vivid in my mind for me to believe a single photograph. I hate this. I'm sorry. I was just trying to help. Oh. Cannon tore the photo in half. Oh, I thought that was Echo that did that. Happy? Cannon spat her final remark with a huff before sulking off, her footsteps heavy on the carpet. Missy picked up the pieces of the photograph. That was awfully cold of you, Echo. What do you want me to do? I mumbled. I I have nothing to offer the world as an ultimate. I can't do anything. I feel like I lost myself in that trial. I had to detach myself from the people I care about. For what? The truth? I just scoffed. After all, it was Missy's fault a gun was introduced to the group. It was her fault the gun fell into the wrong hands. Her fault I lost Ashley. Oh dear. Missy sighed softly. It was never my intention to get Ashley executed. I shrugged Missy away. I didn't want to listen to her. I went to my personal room. I sat on the bed. I sat and I cried. Art, Ashley, they did a horrible thing for their friends. When pressed, the two of them only thought to protect the ones important to them. What an interesting concept. It's completely idiotic, though. They disregarded their own lives for someone else. Selfless and stupid is what they were. Selflessness gets you nothing in return. In a game like this, you have to be selfish and act in self-preservation. Always look out for number one. Number one. Number one. Number one. Huh? Okay. Well, after a sad ending like that, I think this is where we will call it a night. As much as always, would love to continue, but I know I'm asking for it if I do. So, tomorrow I think I'm going to... Hold on. Tomorrow I think I'm going to continue with Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. And then maybe Thursday we'll do chapter 3 of this. As far as who to raid, I see that I see Flame Chocobo is doing Metal Gear Solid, so that sounds like a good raid. So, with that, have a good night, everyone, and I will see you all later.